All right, here for another First Impressions, the great unboxing series for ad tech, right? Like ad tech needed an unboxing video, but we have one. We have one. So everyone knows we are recording this, so we'll make this available to you on Beeler.Tech. We lock it in our little vault with a library of other videos that we've put together. So there'll be other things there to look at. By all means, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. I will decide whether to interrupt Peter as he goes through things with your question, or we'll save it to the end. But want to make sure that we get to that. But because we're recording, I kind of want to keep things moving. We've actually unboxed DoubleVerify before. This isn't our first impressions. I'm not ready to call it second impressions yet, but it's didn't back when we did it, it was actually kind of pre it launching. So I don't even think it was called, DoubleVerify Publisher Suite. So I don't think it technically had a name. Maybe you did internally, but I remember looking at it later going like, I'm actually not sure what this is called. So DoubleVerify for publishers, now it's a DoubleVerify Publisher Suite. So to kind of walk us through the DoubleVerify Publisher Suite, we're talking to Peter Mies, VP Video and Publisher Product. Peter, thanks for walking us through things.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So and again, when we did the series before, the big thing, of course, was that DoubleVerify is known for what it's doing. Adjuster is known for what it was doing. And this was kind of merging and marrying these things together to kind of create kind of a new lens of looking at inventory. And I'm hoping you could kind of walk us through the product. This is a group that wants to see product. So Peter, you might as well start screen sharing now.
Yep,
We're going live with this, by the way. He didn't like put a bunch of tabs together of pre-done stuff. So yeah, we're live. So Peter,
yeah, no better way to show what we got in store, right? Like,
there we go.
Show nothing better than showing the actual product. Yeah, and I think you mentioned the naming. It was kind of a search as well, and I think it represents where we were coming from as we were putting this together. As you mentioned, it's like a combination of adjuster products that have been marketed for like a decade now, and combining that with some of the stuff we were building in-house at DV, some of the stuff from my original company called Zentric that was acquired by DV as well, and the kind of origin story or the overarching vision of why is it a suite, like why is it a collection of these things, is that when we were talking to publishers, so the kind of three key patterns that kept emerging, right, were this idea that people were wasting a lot of time in manual workflows, just grabbing everything they could get, trying to bring it all together and get a perspective of what's going on, which is really what Adjuster's core value proposition was, like connect to hundreds of systems, pull the data, aggregate it, normalize it, present it, and report on it. And then the second piece, once people got that in place, is the transparency piece, like where, and this is especially directed to us as verification companies, is we're getting scored by a black box system. We don't understand how you're coming up with this stuff. We want to understand. We want to know the why. Like, how did you come up with a certain number? And you need to show us what's under the hood, right? And that will then help us with stage 3, which is drive yield, like which is the eventual desired outcome of all of this, is that I know which levers to pull and what to change and how to optimize stuff to make more revenue at the end of the day. And that's kind of why we felt we had to put it all together as well, because each of these in silos is only as powerful as the limited data set that it has.
Right.
If you can't connect the yields to the very first like data aggregation piece, you're just working off of like a small, narrow perspective. And if you don't have the underlying data of how the verification part works under the hood, how are you like pacing correctly against third-party metrics? How are you like targeting exactly to what the buyers are asking you to deliver the add-on? And how are you driving optimization if you don't have that perspective? And that's kind of where for us it connected all the dots, and that helped us then kind of see as well that if we looked at how publishers were solving these challenges today, it was mostly with kind of point silo solutions, right? Like I buy verification from this company, I buy data aggregation from this other company, I buy yield tools from a few other vendors maybe, And now I'm on the hook for like building all the pipes and building all the connections between those systems and try to make sense of it. So we felt the value that we could add was not just like, oh, yet another verification tool you can buy, or like, yeah, like you can get something from Moat, you can get something from IS. Like just replicating what existed doesn't really make a lot of sense for us. So we felt the added value we can provide to the community is bring it all together and automate all the pipes that go between these things.
Get new lenses to it. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, so that's before diving in. That's kind of the context, I guess.
Yeah.
Let's go in. So basically, you just logged in. This is your landing page view. This is kind of where you get started, and this is also the collection of the tools that I was just talking about, right? And what you'll see is that the first two here on the left, Unified Analytics, Campaign Delivery, these were the original Adjuster products, what they call Programmatic IQ was Unified Analytics, and then Flow IQ is Campaign Delivery. And so these two things still exist very much. They solve that first category of issues, which is data aggregation, normalization, reporting, getting that full lay of the land of what's going on. And then we have inventory quality, demand quality, which are the pieces about the transparency. What can we tell you about every possible verification perspective that kind of happened within that, all of your inventory across the site? And that's really extending your first party data set with all the key verification KPIs like viewability, brand suitability, invalid traffic monitoring, and kind of taking a step further from just telling you, hey, this is your viewable impression count, to digging down into the diagnostics of it. Like, if we said something wasn't viewable, why did we say that? Was it because the tab was never in view? Was it for some other reason? Like, tell me the root cause of this thing.
Right.
So we'll dive deeper into that as well, give you a quick perspective of that. And then the kind of one of the outcomes of kind of aggregating all this data that we can give you in the industry benchmarks as well. Like, can we show you how the core KPIs compare to other publishers in the same space, in a certain kind of vertical, or sports publishers, for example, and allow you to benchmark longer term, like how the trends in the industry are evolving, how you stack up against that. And we think that's a really good tool to expand from just like what the traditional revenue benchmarks are to, for example, like how does that compare viewability rates? How does that compare on fraud rates? How does that compare on a number of different KPIs that a buyer may care about, so that if your direct sales team goes out, they can kind of focus on like, what are the 2 or 3 KPIs that my inventory really excels at, where I can make the best possible pitch and kind of move the conversation away. Like, hey, I'm cheaper than everyone else. No, I have better inventory than everyone else. Like, it's more brand suitable. It's safer. It's higher viewability. And that's why I'm charging you more than all the rest. Like, make the case for more revenue, not less, you know?
And even internally, having industry benchmarks along similar sites is extremely helpful, just in terms of arguing why viewability should be at a higher number. If you're behind other sites, you're able to kind of sit there and measure that. And then with the other tools, I'm jumping ahead here mentally, but mentally I would be sitting there going like, how do I then justify that if I took this up, that's X amount more revenue? That's why we have to invest in a faster site, so forth and so on. So all those things.
Exactly. And we're jumping way ahead because this is on my list to talk about. Way at the back is to talk about next steps. Yeah, for sure.
Product. Let's see.
We're excited.
Inventory quality. I want to see some inventory quality.
Let's do it. Let's dive in. So basically, the core concept here is you have a bunch of filters at the top. All of this is backed by impression level data. So no aggregation is happening here so far. I can drill down into every single impression that happens at any given time frame. So basically, my default picture is I get the core KPIs, like how many ads we monitor, how many of those we call valid viewable, which means fraud-free and meeting IAB viewability standards. And then we kind of drill down deeper, like how does that distribute across different devices, like certain device types driving kind of the majority of that traffic. When we say valid and viewable, how much was that due to viewability concerns or invalid traffic concerns? How did those factor into that? And then we break that down into the kind of core constituent reasons why something may either be flagged as fraud or be flagged as non-viewable. So in this case, for example, this is all like just a demo data set that we kind of jumbled together from all sorts of different data points. But for example, in this case, we see a significant majority, like 75% of the non-viewable traffic was the ad was never in the viewport. So it basically was below the fold, stuff like that.
Right.
There are a few other reasons, like it may have not reached the full pixel threshold, like you need 50% of the pixels in view for a certain period of time. So that may have not been met, or the tab was never in focus. So this is an issue as well. But in this case, only 3% of the cases were lost due to just the page being open and you're loading ads or refreshing ads in the page and never really shows up with an active tab. And then there's like the time never reached. So it may have just scrolled past, like if people were scrolling really fast down a page. This would often happen if like you have, for example, a very large header or something in front of the article, and you have a top banner, and you have people just scroll down immediately when they hit the page, and you never hit the 1 or 2 second mark.
And without taking you off course, because I can easily do that, but
Yep.
like one of my questions on that would be, because that would be something I immediately think about with my mobile traffic. And so the ability to kind of drill down is one of choosing by device, right? I could start to actually see that data.
Exactly. So I can now say, like, okay, let's look only at the smartphone data and see if that changes. So, well, this is now 11.6%. And if you look at the full data set,
so
13.9. So it actually happens less on mobile.
Right. Good insight, right? Then to sit there again, where to focus or to think about that in terms of user scroll speed, something you can't necessarily control, but you can start thinking about how often you throw up a position if they're just going to skip right past it. Yeah. Got it.
And so the same goes for the invalid traffic side, right? So, and generally we work mostly with a bunch of premium publishers. So this is never really a huge concern, specifically for most of the publishers that we work with. It is still important to understand because it may show up in pockets of traffic. And a good example is, let's say you're end of the year, you're doing like traffic acquisition strategies to try to get to a certain inventory number to meet all the commitments you've made. And you may have some paid partners driving traffic to your site. And these now have a monetary incentive to invent fraud and send it to you. But you wouldn't know the wiser until the advertiser reports at the end of the campaign, like, hey, we saw this spike in invalid traffic, what's going on? And try to pinpoint who's doing that and kind of kill that relationship in favor of others that are not doing such kind of bad acting.
That makes sense. I think one of the things that I would see as an advantage here, right, is if I'm working with agencies or buyers that are using DoubleVerify, is again that lens of how they're seeing it, right? Because again, depending on the type of site I have, like, you know, you have data center traffic. And again, I'm picking on a use case you may not necessarily care for, but I would be sitting there looking at that number and wanting to know more and more about that because you know, some things fall into that bucket that may not, but at the same time, a lot of it is. There's a lot of questions there, but it's really hard to have that conversation when you only get a number from a client saying we're not paying you for that, right? So the ability to see my inventory again, I saw from the filters by campaign, by these types of things, allows you to go, you know what, maybe it has to do with my targeting by audience or something along those lines to any of these other things, as well as your point, traffic acquisition. So
or like traffic acquisition, audience extension, for example, like your ads are running somewhere else, like you don't know what their practices are, like you can make some assumptions, but now you get the data, right? That's kind of the core idea. You can drill down into any of that subset, like in individual campaigns, line items, display video, basically just about anything you care about.
Trafficker, I can find out who's trafficking all the bad areas.
Exactly.
Talk about the brand suitability and safety on this, and I want to make sure we
so
keep you on track, or at least
we covered viewability, we covered invalid traffic. Let's talk about brand, and this is a difficult one because viewability and invalid traffic are generically defined across the industry. Like I can take IB viewability as a standard, I can take just invalid traffic as a yes/no decision. That's harder to do with brand suitability because it's so much in the eye of the beholder, right? Like every advertiser has a different definition of what is brand suitable to them. And I feel this is often a confusion in the market as well. There's no such thing as like a binary, this is suitable content and this is not suitable content. Like classic example is Disney doesn't want to advertise against alcohol content, but AB InBev loves advertising against alcohol content. Like it's totally separate for everyone. And So what we wanted to do as a starting point is to at least give you a perspective as to how we classified each individual page, and then allow you to kind of see how much inventory you had in each of the different categories that people may or may not want to get. And that allows you to then run some simulation, like how much inventory do I have available in certain categories, and also see that we're so confident in the data that we're giving it to you at the URL level. So you could actually see for each and every article how we classified it, and what that looks like. So basically, this is just an overview of all your inventory, and then how many impressions we saw on each individual kind of classification category.
Okay.
And now I can drill down and say, like, well, disaster natural, let's dive deeper into what that is, right? Like, what did you classify as disaster natural? And then you get a list of all the URLs on your site that we classified this way, and how many impressions those contributed to your overall inventory, and then kind of allow you to dig deeper. Vice versa, let's say I'm interested in, for example, a specific article that is doing weird stuff. So I can click on that, and then I can see kind of how much inventory that page generated for me as a whole, and how that distributed across all the possible categories. Now, I have to say that we can assign multiple categories to one page, right? It's not always doesn't fit into one category. It could be
right.
A combination of, it's a movie about cars. Maybe we classify it as automotive and arts and entertainment, you know? So one impression could be counted into multiple categories at the same time. That's just
Got it. What it tells me is that it would give me a list to look at some of these categories where I know a publisher's going to, or excuse me, a buyer's going to have an issue, and I can look to see again like how I might tag it, right, in such a way so that I'm not serving ads against it because that particular advertiser is going to have an issue, right? Like, in other words, again, this gives me insight into how they see it.
Yep. And then just the last part is basically breaking down best, worst performing by like several breakdown dimensions. So do I have specific creative sizes that have the highest viewability rate versus the lowest viewability rate? Are there certain sites, like if I have a collection of sites, which ones are best and worst performing? To the point that we even allow you to do that for custom macros that you feed in yourself. So these filters on the top, they're not just the ones that we've defined as standard fields. Some of these, like for example, infinite scroll, something that is custom configured for this account, and for every impression, you just feed us a macro with that data point. We'll tag all the impressions just the way you want them, and then you can drill down into specific subsegments. So people can use that. For example, let's say I'm running an A/B test. I could feed in a custom macro saying this is A, this is B, and I can actually compare all the verification metrics for my A. Like, let's say I move an ad unit somewhere higher on the page, the theories that will increase viewability, I can validate that that theory is true or false by feeding the A/B test into this as a custom macro. Site sections, content categories, any other kind of tagging you do, you can feed into this as well to get granular data results, and then compare success versus lower performing parts of the site.
Got it. All right.
Cool.
You had other boxes. We got to get. Oh, are you going to show us a different insight here?
Well, so I just want to say, like, campaign is basically just pretty much the same thing. It only shows you an additive to this is time view. So the same insights, but then mapped out over time, so you can kind of see how that evolved, as well as we have some more detailed performance. Like, you can actually drill down into each individual thing and get like a full overview of all the metrics. What most people will do is like export this to, like, you can export anything on these dashboards to your own offline processing if that's what you want. And then finally, we have like GIVT data. So the MRC requires us to separate this out. This is the fun of MRC accreditations. We need to separate GIVT data out of all the reporting and provide it as a separate view. So that's available here. Yeah, this is a quick and dirty overview from inventory quality.
Great, you covered a lot of ground there. That was great.
Yeah.
The quality, you mentioned, you want to go to quality targeting?
Yes. So quality targeting is a really cool thing because it tries, that's the difference between the insights part here and then the automation part at the bottom. The automation part tries to have a direct impact on yield, right? Like, not just show you the goods and give you the data and do your own analysis, but have an incremental improvement. And the quality targeting piece is about, we can basically create a script tag for you that you dump in your header of your page, and it will get all of these data signals upfront in real time for every page view. Like, do we consider this invalid traffic? What do we predict the viewability is going to be like? How are we classifying this one impression at this very instant? In the same way that a buyer would get it from us on the programmatic side if they were evaluating that same impression. And then quality targeting automatically connects to GAM and feeds it in as key values, so that for every single line item, every single campaign you're managing, you can target it to like away from invalid traffic towards certain brand suitability categories, hitting at least a certain viewability threshold, giving you the same targeting powers that we're giving the buy side in their DSPs, but now for all your direct inventory, your direct campaigns. So that's really cool, and some of our publishers have been using that to great effect already. To like, if you know a buyer cares a lot about DV metrics, this is a great way to just hit their goals perfectly, right?
Yeah, I don't want to serve anyone's ad to invalid traffic, but I also know that there are people who are going to ride me on the fact that I'm doing that. So
Sure.
the fact that I could actually incorporate that in, again, using some of the very same tech, methodology, means again, I can reduce that greatly.
Yep. And what we recommend, like when people ask, our recommendation, just define a positively targeted house campaign that is targeted towards the invalid traffic, so that they just all get the house ads. That's like,
right,
whatever, it's fine. The advertisers will get to see it, and it looks like you're perfectly fraud-free, right?
Yeah.
This is how we've worked with some of the SSP platforms and DSP platforms, so that they can make fraud-free guarantees to their buyers, is by doing exactly that.
Got it. Very cool. And so viewability in brands. Okay, got it. Next to that, you have video delivery. And I know you're a video guy, so I know this is a topic you're going to want to cover.
Near and dear to my heart. We talked about it before. So video delivery is stemming from some of our original video expertise, where it was absurd for me to see, but like a ridiculous amount of video inventory does not deliver for all sorts of reasons. And it's so painful because it's the highest value inventory you have in terms of CPMs. And we're seeing numbers like 10% on the low end to 50% on the high end of ad requests that fail to render. And people will maybe remember or have seen this before when they look at GAM reports or something, where you see ad served count for video and then how many impressions you actually get. Like, there's a material difference between those two numbers.
Yes, there
is. So that's the delta we're talking about. So you had a buyer, you had a campaign, you served it back to the page, and just it evaporates into thin air. Where did the impression go? Nobody knows. And some of it is explained by these vast error codes, like the video errors, that you can kind of analyze what the root causes of that was. But just some of that never reports back. There's nothing, no impression pixel, no error pixel. You're kind of left out to guess, right? And so video delivery tries to address some of that. The kind of idea is that we're going to be tagging your video to measure viewability, brand safety, brand suitability, invalid traffic. We want to tag your video ads anyway to do that. As we do that, as we're going through that process, we can apply server-side acceleration to video delivery, meaning that the server will take over some of the work from the client of what the video player would normally have to do, and do it on really fast data center connections, speed the whole process up, and deliver the ad faster to the client, which avoids timeouts and a bunch of errors on the client. And we've seen that, we've deployed that with some of like large volume customers so far. Some of the really large platforms, video focused publishers, we're seeing between, I would say, 5 to 30% improvements in their impression volumes by applying this acceleration technology. So that's been really helpful for them. And just like, if I can just flip a switch and get 5 to 30% more revenue, yes, that sounds pretty good. So it combines three things at once, right? The viewability, like the measurement parts, that's included by default in just all of our stuff. Then we have the acceleration as an add-on feature if you want that. And then as we're doing the acceleration, we also collect a ton of data about the whole demand chain sitting behind your inventory. So as we're going through this acceleration process, we can actually see, oh, this is hitting SpotX. And then after SpotX, these guys came, and then these guys came. And then this is the original ad server where the ad is being served from. And how much errors are each of these parties introducing? Who's responsible? How much latency are they adding to your pages? So getting full visibility into the dozen parties involved in every single ad delivery and how much they contributed to errors and latency is kind of a valuable data set in its own right for people to take a look at.
Yeah, no, it's, and video is such a key area to get right. And believe me, I've been mapping out a waterfall of what I think it should be to what it actually turns out to be. And it's distressing to watch the drop off. So we may have to talk about that. I'm assuming with these two things that you covered, there's not really a UI thing to show on that. What I got from the quality targeting is you get those things and you had that in. One thing, circling back real quick on the inventory quality, just as a quick question.
Yeah, sure.
Which is, those are of course all built off how DoubleVerify defines fraud. If once again, some like an advertiser was using IAS, you still could have a discrepancy between their numbers and your numbers. It doesn't solve for what IAS said, but if you got DoubleVerify to DoubleVerify, you're at least looking at the same kind of lens methodology and so forth, right?
Correct. And I would argue if it's DoubleVerify and the buyer uses IAS, it's going to move you in the right direction, right? Like the IVT we remove, it's going to materially reduce their invalid traffic numbers as well. There is going to be some difference in the data sets, but it's better than nothing, I would argue.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Great. So what's next? I love this suite thing, because then we can just sit there and just kind of around.
It's like just pop some candy out of the box, right? It's like,
right. Well, industry benchmarks. What about industry benchmarks?
Yeah, let's do it. So as I mentioned, industry benchmarks is this idea that I want to be able to compare my performance against my competitive set. How well am I doing, right? And so right now what it shows you is like we have CPM data, discrepancy data. So because we do the first to third party mapping, we can actually like, are your discrepancies worse or better than anyone else in the industry? Click-through rates, revenue growth. So kind of benchmarking. Again, this is demo data. So otherwise this publisher is underperforming the industry quite a bit. So, and this is based on the broad spectrum of like, I think over 100 publishers that we have in the system. Right? So we have quite a bit of data feeding into this. Obviously it's all anonymized, so you can't drill down into an individual competitor, but you can say like, I want to see within the news industry, how did that evolve over time, right? And how did my data compare to their data? That kind of stuff. So that's kind of really allowing you to drill deep. There are some further breakdowns into by ad format, like I can do ad unit sizes, kind of see how I stack up against each of these for that. Campaign third-party ad servers, so see kind of, are my CPMs, am I getting better CPMs from a certain partner than from other people? How is that happening? So this allows some really fine-grained drill downs. And then the time ranges on these are pretty big. Like you can actually let's look at the last year, you know, like on a monthly basis. So you can really get the longer term perspective rather than like do day-to-day, week-to-week performance data you'd be tracking to do like campaign optimization.
And these are all categories that you've set up as to what is news and so forth. Is there any insight as to what is in these groups? Like what is in finance? Would I have visibility to know who that is and to what extent? Because obviously, again, there's two different ways to look at that, right?
Yeah, no, totally get it. And we're trying to find the right balance between if we give too much transparency where like which publishers the data is originating from, then a lot of people will not want to participate in this program.
Correct.
And we're trying to strike the right balance between, hey, it's totally non-traceable, so you shouldn't be too worried, versus we can give everybody like a really strong data set that they can compare against that has sufficient sample size to be kind of relevant, right? Because if it's only based on 2 other publishers, like what does that really mean when I compare to them?
Got it. Okay.
So this is a thing I would say.
We do have a question of like, Are industry benchmarks available by publisher or group within a DV account, or is it only available to look at on the account as a whole? And I'm not sure I can guide you as to where that what that means.
Yeah, so I assume what the question means is, let's say I am an organization, I have a DVPS account, and I have 15 publishers under the same
That
group,
makes sense.
maybe using the same account. Like, can they each get their own individual perspective? I would say right now that is not the case. So right now, this is just an overview perspective, and of course you can drill down into the comparative data set, like which industry segment you're comparing against, and you could kind of compare that back to your own data. But that's a great point, and this is something we're investing in right now. Like if we talk about roadmap stuff, benchmarking is a big topic that we're investing in right now. Because as you can see, my whole story about showing viewability data, invalid traffic data, that is what we need to add to this interface, and that's kind of what we're working on as we speak.
Very cool. Okay, got it, Matt. Great question. Great question. Good. So let's pop back out unified analytics.
Yep. So unified analytics is, I would say, the closest thing to a true BI tool that we have, right? The idea behind unified analytics is its origin story is to deal with aggregating programmatic data. I have a dozen programmatic partners, grab all their data, normalize it so that all the columns are the same thing, and I can bring it all together so that I don't have to like do spreadsheet magic myself, and then report it to me in like easy to understand automated reports as well as dashboards I can click around in. So the key building blocks here are we have connections. So you can basically connect this thing to a whole bunch of systems, and we're continuously adding more based on customer requests and kind of prioritization. Or I can simply like dump an email report or some other kind of generic way of dumping the data into the system. We just connect under your credentials. We grab all the data we can get on a regular schedule, like on a daily basis. Our system understands for each of these parties what all their columns mean, so we can map them to a universal identity, like universal advertisers, and we normalize all the data. And that then allows you to, in the data manager here, to join it all together, basically concatenate all the SSP data into a single table that allows you to run reporting of them as a group rather than each individually. We just talked about this recently, but one of the things that's coming out shortly is going to be like metric joins as well. So where we cannot just say, hey, let's concatenate all of this programmatic data together, just add all the rows up in a normalized way, but also now for each of them, look up in another data set what all the metrics were for each of these campaigns and these individual creatives. So for example, the key use cases, viewability, invalid traffic, brand suitability. Like, look up all those values in our other data set, which you can also connect here. And then we'll bring it all together basically into one single big massive data warehouse where you can get anything you want.
There you go. There's the sales pitch. There's the sales pitch. We got all the data. It's all in one big spot. Yes, got it.
Yeah, and so then the goal is to give you like these dashboards where you can do breakdowns of like individual advertisers, how many impressions, what are the CPMs you're getting from them, how's that trending in terms of revenues, kind of getting the full picture across all of your programmatic data. And then basically you can slice and dice this any way you want. Just like in a BI tool, you would be able to do that.
Got it. And this is the programmatic part. This was Flow IQ.
Yep. Programmatic IQ. Yeah.
Programmatic IQ.
So Flow IQ is the other part, which is campaign delivery. This then kind of drills that into, still on the benchmark tab here. So this is around delivering direct sold campaigns, right? This is where I, as an ad ops person, want to keep track of every advertiser, order, line item, and I want to see how each of them are pacing, how each of them are delivering against the third-party metrics that the advertiser is putting forward. Like even if it's Motor IS, you will kind of bake it in here. And I want to see like revenue at risk, like what am I not on track to deliver on time and on as promised. I want to see how the discrepancies stack up for each of these between my local ad server, third-party ad servers. And this is kind of an operational dashboard to see what's happening. And this same story, hundreds of connections to all your different third-party systems, local party systems, bring all the data together, join it up, see all the reporting jointly together as a single view. And I get notifications and alerts.
Right. I mean, all of this gives a good place to start your day, you know, and just sit there and look to make sure how things are going. You know, you got all, yeah, I get it. It kind of, I can see how it works into the workflow of someone that's maintaining all these elements.
And so that kind of brings us to the full picture again, right? So if we look at what are all the building blocks, like unified analytics, campaign delivery, the last two we looked at are aggregate data, normalize it, report it, understand what's going on. The quality side is build a first-party data set about across your whole inventory to identify diagnostics around verification KPIs. Industry benchmarks empowers your sales team and your internal teams to understand, like, how am I comparing to the industry competitive set? And then these automation tools are about just fix that video inventory, recuperate a bunch of that revenue, quality targeting, like don't under deliver on a certain campaign. If this is what a buyer cares about, deliver them exactly that definition of a valid impression. Nothing more, nothing less. And that really reduces waste and like buffering and all that kind of stuff.
Got it. One question that came up was the export options of the compiled data in the user unified analytics piece.
Let me open it. Can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, I mean, what are the export options?
Oh, got it. Yeah. So this is where the reporting comes in, right? So you have the dashboards, which are more around like interactive. I'm going to click around, and the reports are mostly I want to really define a kind of weekly or daily report, and I want you to deliver it to me in my inbox or something like that. So basically, here's how you set up like all the columns you want. This is a kind of a sense of what that would look like. And then you can basically say, I want this as an Excel sheet, I want this as a CSV file, email it to me, deliver it to my Amazon S3 bucket if you have like that, and you can schedule it then for like a regular frequency to just deliver to you, or just say I want it ad hoc, I'll run it when I need it. So it's totally up to you. Some people prefer dive into the interactive dashboard, so I'm going to set everything up there. Other people say, I want you to collect all the data, aggregate it, normalize it, create the data set, and then I'm feeding it into something else that is going to power a bigger perspective.
Yeah, I can see as someone that, like, again, from a programmatic perspective, breaking it down to as many pieces. Sometimes you want to pull it out of the system and run it your way. Great. So you kind of covered the pieces and why you've got the particular pieces, the analytics to that. Tell us a little bit about what you're working on. I mean, again, like, having watched the journey, right, from the DoubleVerify is buying Adjuster, you actually starting to see the product and now seeing a product, right, and seeing some familiar elements and some new elements to it, right? You're continuing to go forward. What does that look like?
Yeah. So I think based on the demo here, I think you can already see some emerging patterns on stuff that we still consider like, hey, these are artifacts of the past that we want to fix on our side to just build a better product experience. And it's a lot driven by integration of the value of each of these individually. So to give a few examples, like the distinction between programmatic and direct is an artificial distinction. It's inventory and you have multiple ways of selling it. And really you want these two to live together. There are different perspectives on the same data, I would argue. So bringing these two things closer together and then being able to join generic data sets, like combine the revenue data with the viewability data, is going to, we believe, would be a really powerful value proposition for our customers, especially when you then bring it into benchmarks. Because with benchmarks, what we can do there is then we can, right now we're showing trends, right? And this is kind of the industry, I would say, state of the art is show me a graph over time of a certain KPI. But what we really want to get to is, to an earlier point you made, is show me the correlation between viewable impressions and revenue, like CPMs. Is higher viewable inventory actually getting valued higher in programmatic or not? And we've done some really cool analysis on this data where we see like super linear correlations. So where if you hit a certain minimum viewability threshold, competition for the impression heats up programmatically, and the CPMs are getting like triple or quadruple over below that same threshold. So there's some really cool insights that we can gain from like bringing those two perspectives together. So that's something we're working on. But third, in terms of transparency, is advertiser data. Like, I know we're already trying to expose as much as we can, like given all the technological limitations, just to hook everything up. But we want to take it to the next level in the near future with like one of the key questions, for example, blocking decisions, right? When advertisers block an impression, I want to know how often that happens, not only in direct, but also in programmatic. I want to know the reasons behind that. I want to, like, was it due to keyword blocking, which is a very specific use case, or was it due to some other reasons? What exactly did they not like, and how can I fix it? So getting that level of transparency is something that we're keen to provide in the near future. More advanced targeting signals. So just as we open that up, we can already give you viewability, brand suitability, and invalid traffic. There's contextual targeting. We have this thing called authentic brand suitability segments, which is the idea that just target to whatever Disney wants. I don't want to configure exactly what that is. We give you a single targeting ID.
Oh, interesting.
Target to it. You will target exactly to what that buyer wants. You don't need to worry about what it is.
I have a couple clients in mind that would make my life much easier. Like, what you want, I don't have to like sit there and continually guess. So I like that. What about forecasting against all this though, right? Is that going to be something where, again, you're passing to me key values. So am I going into Google Ad Manager and saying, when I pick up on this particular, brand suitable, viewable, non-invalid traffic, or valid traffic, that's going to be where I kind of pull that forecasting, or are you going to be in the forecasting game?
No, that's exactly right. Like, so one of the things is, this is kind of back to the original, like the founding vision of our department within the organization, but we believe in an open ecosystem where we don't want to create a walled garden, like there are many walled gardens already in the world. So it made a lot more sense for us to feed the data into GAM and allow it to do the forecasting from within there, than try to build our own forecasting tool. So when we see something already exist, we'll just interface with it and work with it rather than like trying to replace it.
I mean, as someone who doesn't have any input on your roadmap, my thought on that is I think that makes sense, unless you can, of course, do it better, right?
That's the other point, yes.
When you get to the point where you're doing it better than they do, then I want yours, because otherwise all you're doing is creating a new discrepancy, right? Like, why does this system say one thing, not the other? So I get that. There's a part, and again, Google Ad Manager has been working on their forecasting, but that's the part where that adds that other level to this, right? That you want to get to. Yeah. I mean, look, this is, first of all, thank you. One, because I think that there's an aspect that, as much as I went through and we did like 3 sessions in the summer, right? They were kind of 3 separate pieces. You've done with this, kind of brought it all together. And so I do see it as a suite, right? And then again, it's a matter of looking at, where are my pain points today? Where am I going? And starting to kind of plot those out as to which of these boxes I start on, where am I going with this, and working that into the flow. And again, I think the some of the unique aspect of combining the double, the verification data and seeing my inventory with that, to me, would just like, I feel, and again, I do work with golf.com, and I get brand safety issues, and you're like, we're talking about golf 100% of the time. Now, okay, the story about John Daly, I got it. Went a little off course. I get it, right? But like, just to even know that that's getting flagged by somebody, it just allows me to sit there and start thinking like, this advertiser wants this, that, and so forth. So, that, Peter, is there anything else you wanted to say? I am going to open up to questions, but wanted to get.
I'd love to talk anything the audience would like to talk about.
Yeah. So, call of action. If someone is interested in learning more, engaging with you, where should they go? Who should?
There is pub.doubleverify.com and a big green request demo button that allows you to contact us.
Got it.
And if otherwise, you can send me an email. You can shoot me. You can let Rob know, and he'll connect you.
Rob at Beeler.Tech. I'll connect you to Peter, or pub.doubleverify.com. So Peter,
Exactly.
thank you with that.